And now back to the Carl Nelson Show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450.
1450 WOL Radio.
And thank you for rolling with us. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. His book is called The Code. That's a short name. We'll give you the full title of the book before he leaves us. Got a question about race, white supremacy. This is the man you need to pose a question to. Number is 800-450-7876. You're out there texting. Text about Intel and Neely Fuller Jr. is on the radio. You can reach us at 1450. And if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, or just WLDCnews.com if you're listening to us anywhere around the world. Before I take some calls to you, Neely Fuller Jr., you once said that if you don't understand racism and white supremacy, everything that you think you understand or may think you understand will only confuse you. What do you mean by that?
Well, actually, I said, that's one time I said that, and then I modified it, and this is the way my textbook has it now, and has had it from 1971. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. Why? Because the system of white supremacy takes into account everything. And there's no part of what black people, non-white people on the planet do or don't do that the white supremacists do not control. And if any non-white person doesn't understand this, they're going to be confused, not only about racism, they're going to be confused about everything. I mean, in all areas of activity, they're going to be confused about the economics, about money systems, how money works, who controls money, how they move it around, what is valuable, what is not valuable. And basically, economics is just not about money. It's about the use of time and energy. How are people going to use their time and energy on the planet? The white supremacists make these decisions when it comes to all of the non-white people. Non-white people don't do anything but react to what the white supremacists dictate. And that's what I mean, that you don't understand this. We don't understand it, because if we understood it, it would be a giant wake-up call that we are on remote control. We are drones. We are on remote control all the time by whatever the white supremacists dictate. If you are a person of color in all of the areas of activity, and I'll list them again: economics, education. There's no part of the education system anywhere on the planet that the white supremacists don't dominate, even when they are nowhere around. They dominate the educational systems. They decide who will learn what, and what that learning will mean, and how it will be applied. And this applies to every people in every little village who have never even seen a white person, might not have even heard of one. They look around and they just see people that look like them, but they are being dominated by remote control. That's what white supremacy means. It's all engrossing. It has made a prison camp out of the entire planet for anyone who has color in his or her skin. And that's what I mean. If you don't understand this, then you're not going to understand a shooting. And, and you come out and say, well, my life matters. I mean, why is it that people are treating me like my life doesn't matter? It's because you're in the system of white supremacy. Your life is not supposed to matter, except within the context of a prisoner of war. You have to look at yourself from birth to death. As long as white supremacy exists, if you are a person of color, a person with color in his or her skin, you are already a prisoner of war. A prisoner of war. A prison has rules. You don't break the rules of the white supremacist prison. If you do, you are going to be punished, because you're already being punished just by being in prison. And your punishment was based on what? Your imprisonment was based on what? You were born with the incorrect color according to the white supremacists. Whatever created you made a huge mistake. Or even if whatever created you didn't make a mistake, the white supremacist says, well, it's convenient for us to look upon you as a person who is supposed to be used and abused. For what? For my convenience. That's what. And so I set up a whole system that governs everything that you do. Every place you go. There's no such thing as a place that you can go that I do not dominate. Now, Neely Fuller having sat there and said that, the only thing that the people who are listening to this program have to ascertain is if you're going to use logic. First of all, is it true? This thing called white supremacy that Neely Fuller claims in his book and in his talks and been doing it for years, he's claiming that the white supremacists are the smartest and most powerful people that the world has seen in all recorded history. And someone might say, that's absurd, he's crazy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's why I always tell people, don't believe anything that Neely Fuller says. After all, who's he? Who is he? I mean, he's just making statements. What I do say, check and see who are the people who finally tell everybody else with color in his or her skin what they are going to do, what they are not going to do, when and where, and under what circumstances, where they can buy a house, what desert island they can go to, where they can get a passport to go anywhere on the planet, whether or not their children are going to be fed tonight. If you got color in your skin, either directly or indirectly, the white supremacists, and I'm not talking about all white people, I'm talking about those who decided that they were going to be racist. They have joined the greatest army that the world has ever seen, and that army is deadly efficient at what it does, and that's dominate and mistreat people based on color. And they decide whether a non-white person anywhere on this planet is going to put a fork in some food tonight and eat that food, because they dominate the fork and the food and the person and the land that the person is on. This thing about you got some land somewhere that black people can put up a flag and say, this is my land. Well, if the white supremacists walk in there at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, oh, is this your land? Oh, you think this is your land? This never was your land. I just let you rent here. I just let you occupy it because I don't want to use it at the moment. But I want to use it at the moment now because I'm here. So get out of my way. And there hasn't been a place where they didn't get out of his or her way. Now, there are some people who say, oh, yeah, there have been some places they got run out of. They didn't get run out. They were just exercising a little game to play little games with. They left when they got ready to leave. Why? Where's the proof? Because they could have blown up everybody in that place who had color in his or her skin. Just pull out and blow up the place. Everybody in it. Everybody knows this, but we play games with ourselves like we don't know it. And that's why we come out and say, why is it that these things keep happening to black people? Why do we keep getting shot down and nothing happens? I mean, it keeps happening over and over again. It's because we have to get a replacement of the entire system of racism, white supremacy, and replace it with a system of justice, which means we're going to have to start doing some serious, honest talk. We're talking about solutions now, and tell the truth to white people all over this planet. That's the only way it's going to work. It's got to be done all over the planet. And they tell the truth about what they have been doing and what they intend to do about the non-white people on this planet. Rodney King got it correct. He says, can we all get along? That's a question. All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. That's a question that hasn't been answered. But if we answer that in the affirmative, we can get along. It is possible. and we can produce a product called justice and replace this system called white supremacy, then we won't have this thing of having a controversy about white supremacy being the dominant factor, and every 2 or 3 weeks somewhere on the planet, or every day some places on the planet, bombs going off everywhere, children getting their legs blown off from landmines left in Angola. This is all of white supremacist operation. I mean, over and over again, we keep saying, why do these things keep happening? You've got a system in place that guarantees that it will happen. You don't have to keep having demonstrations saying why. It goes with the territory. There's a movie, a TV series out where a lieutenant asked during the Battle of the Bulge, and I saw it. It's called Band of Brothers. And near the end of that series, a lieutenant in the Army was told, you better get your troops out of here, Lieutenant, or you're going to be surrounded. I mean, the Germans are coming through. They made a breakthrough up there at a place called Bastogne, and they're coming right at you. You better get out of here. You're going to be surrounded. And the lieutenant looked at him puzzled. The other lieutenant he was talking to said, Lieutenant, we are paratroopers.
Tell you what, hang on a second.
Supposed to be
hang on a second, Neely. We got to take a quick break. I'll let you finish. We got some folks who want to speak to you. You two can join the conversation with Neely Fuller, 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next, right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for rolling with us, folks. Just want to remind you, Malefi Asante, Dr. Asante will be here later this week, actually tomorrow, I think, talking about Afrocentricity and also how it relates to the Dallas shooters. And the Dallas shooters being described as an Afrocentric person. You know, they showed him in his dashiki and all of that, with the Black Power salute. And Dr. Asante says think it's an affront to Afrocentricity. So we'll discuss that with him. 800-450-7876. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. And Neely Fuller Jr., I'm going to let you finish up what you're saying, then we got some folks who want to speak to you.
Yes, and I'd like to address some of the things that are in the news. I mean, that's a result of the system of white supremacy, and that is the recent series of shootings and counter shootings and whatnot. This goes with the territory, but I want to finish the trend that I started with. This Band of Brothers, where just a statement was made, and it's supposed to be based on a true event. The other lieutenant looked at one lieutenant and said that you better get your men out of here because they're going to be surrounded. And the other lieutenant responded, the Army lieutenant said, a little puzzled, he said, we're paratroopers. We're supposed to be surrounded. And so I was thinking when I saw that, I had heard that years ago. I mean, I read it somewhere. And I was thinking in terms of this is the way that black people throughout this planet are supposed to think. In that same vein, and within this context, and that is, we are subjects of the system of white supremacy. We are black people in the system of white supremacy. We're supposed to be under siege. Now, if we just had that mindset every day that we woke up, then we could finally, in a rapid fire fashion, I would say, I think, with that kind of mindset, we could solve this problem. But I think that most of us wake up thinking that we're in la-la land. No, we are under siege, and we're supposed to be under siege because the government of the world that's been set up has put us under siege. We are supposed to be abused in a system that was set up to abuse us. And we need to stop acting like we're in some other system. We're not in some other system. If we realize that and take that seriously, then we can sit down. Now, I'm not talking about hating white people or anything like that. And I'm certainly not talking about just going out and randomly shooting anybody, anywhere, in any time or something like that. I'm talking about solving the problem. But you can't solve a problem unless you understand the problem you're in. And people often we use the incorrect terms to start with. We accuse America of racism. I mean, scholars do that. And I cringe every time I hear it. There's no such thing as an American practicing racism. That is totally impossible. That can't be done under any circumstance. An American does not practice racism. A racist practices racism. A white supremacist practices racism. That's the only form of racism ever that has ever existed on the planet in recorded history. It's white supremacy. That's who practices racism. Police officers do not practice racism. That is absolutely impossible. But see, the white supremacists know how to engineer the language in such a way that it say we have a problem between black and the great blue line. And I cringe when I hear that. And I cringe when I hear black people repeating it. Oh yeah, we got a black and blue problem. No, you have a black and white supremacy problem. I mean, putting on some uniform, I mean, there are people that, in all kinds of uniforms that are blue. People wear blue shirts. People, blue, what does that mean? It's the person who is in the uniform. And the main uniform in the system of white supremacy is skin. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about some badge, some uniform. We're talking about skin color and non-color. We're talking about white and non-white. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about elected officials or any of this other stuff that gets in the way. We have to get an understanding between every white person and every non-white person on this planet about how we are going to share this planet. Otherwise, in the system of white supremacy, we're going to keep getting the same thing. And I have said that from this first series of shootings, going back to Trayvon Martin and coming forward all the way, and then all of the shooting that goes on, and people correct him when they point that out. I mean, like Chirac, as it's called, Chicago with all those killings among black people themselves, that's all a part of the white supremacist system. It's going to happen as long as you have a system of racism. You cannot eliminate any of this, pecking around at the edges of it and demonstrating and whatnot without calling it what it is not going to get you anything. You have to eliminate the entire system. And it's not the American system. The American system has never existed. It's a concept. Just like counter-racism, the book that I have written, is a concept. I've never gotten rid of racism. No one ever has. No one has ever gotten rid of racism. And no one has ever established a system called American system. It's a concept. It's something that people dream of doing. That's what Martin Luther King called it. American dream. That's exactly what it is. It's a dream. It doesn't exist. Nor does the African system, nor does the Asian system. These words don't have definitions, except the definition that you give it when you put it with the definition of justice, which means people. You're talking about people, not a place. People who do what? Because when you talk about people, and you say these people are special, these people have to be doing something. So what is an American person doing, or an Asian person doing, or an African person doing that is different? That is different and should be different. They should be practicing justice. Otherwise, these words mean absolutely nothing. So you don't have any Americans, you don't have any Africans, and you don't have any Asians anywhere on this planet for a very logical reason. You don't have any people on this planet who practice justice. And the main reason you don't have any people on this planet who practice justice is because justice and white supremacy, logically speaking, cannot exist in the same planet at the same time. It is absolutely impossible. So everybody should be trying to be an American, an African, and an Asian. Everybody on the planet. Truth be told, people might, say that's a weird concept, but you better believe you better come up with a whole bunch of weird concepts if you're going to solve this problem, because the concepts that we've been working with so far has not gotten rid of the biggest problem that this earth has ever seen, and that's the problem of racism, white supremacy.
Let's take some calls here. A bunch of folks are holding for a while. 800-450-7876. And again, I tell you, got to listen very, very keenly. Neely Fuller uses logic to prove anything. Joseph's waiting for us. He's on line 3. Joseph's calling us from Washington, D.C. Joseph, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Yes, hi, good evening. I want to take the time and use it wisely, and I would like Dr. Fuller to explore more about the notion of a system. And why so is because, again, Dr. Welding brought that to the fore and constantly, repetitively mentioned that it's a system. I've tried to understand it more, and this concept of a system, and one of the things I've found is that the total energy of a system is to perpetuate itself, is to maintain itself. Therefore, this idea of supremacy and racism, it's almost like if it's consuming a power pill to continue to maintain itself and become even more powerful. I'll just ask Dr. Fuller to expound more on the notion of system and this idea that racism, supremacy is practiced as a religion internationally and in the known world.
All right, and that's a good point. I thank you, Joseph, for your call. I remember one of the founders of one of the founders of the group. She was on TV, on CNN actually, and they asked her about racism, white supremacy. She said it was a system. I said, wait a minute, Dr. Wilson must be smiling in her grave right now. She explained, the Black Lives Matter lady did, that racism, white supremacy, because obviously the person who was interviewing her never heard of the concept. But Dr. Fuller, can you explain that for Joseph? The system.
The system of, you put it in capital letters, the system of white supremacy is the strongest and most efficient government among people that the world has ever seen in recorded history. I don't know about pre-recorded history, but when you compare the system of white supremacy with any so-called governments that have ever existed, no other government comes anywhere close in efficiency and in power. And all a system is just like an electrical system or plumbing system. You go into an apartment building or a house. There's a plumbing system in that house if it's a modern house. It's a system. So if you study plumbing, you see that plumbing consists of pipes. It consists of various types of other equipment. Fittings that go on pipes. Called pipe fittings. This is all a part of a system. And you have these plumbing systems up under the ground in cities and whatnot. To see to it that people get water in an efficient manner, in an ideal setting. Where they are doing they have an excellent water system, but regardless of what kind of water goes through the pipes, a lot of it that goes through now is poisonous and whatnot, even in some of the modern cities. But the plumbing that carries the water is a system. An automobile is a system. You put a wire here, you put a wire there, you put something in there called an engine, and then you put a carburetor in there of some type. And then you put some gasoline into the engine and some types of mixtures of this and that and the other, and you put water in a radiator. This is a system. You have hoses going here. You have wires going there. You have what they call a braking system. See, we're talking about systems. You know that you have a system when it works. That's the only time you know you got a system. If you have a whole bunch of stuff thrown together and it doesn't work, you don't have a system. I don't care what kind of system it is. And it's the same as when people say, we have a school system. But if the students are not learning, you don't have a school system. You have someone who probably is attempting to have a school system, but if people are not learning what you have school set up for, then it's something incorrect about your system. You need
hold that
to.
thought right there, Doc. We got to take a quick break. Wow. I'm glad you explained it that way. 800-450-7876. Speak to Neely Fuller Jr. Who calls next as the big show rolls on from 1450 WOL, where information is power. Well, thank you for staying with us. Our guest is Neely Fuller Jr. We're talking about the system of white supremacy, racism. Folks, you got I can't express it. You got to listen very keenly, because sometimes it goes over some people's heads. They don't get it when we talk about racism and white supremacy. Joseph's great question was about to explain the system, how it works. And basically what Neely Fuller is saying, it feeds off itself. It keeps working. And that's all it needs, because it's a system. That's what Dr. Wilson used to talk about all the time when she was here. Do you want to continue explaining, or do you want to take another call?
Well, I wanted to get to the last part of that question. He asked about religion, white supremacy, because I have said that white supremacy is the strongest religion on the planet. There's no religion. I don't care what religion people claim that they have. There's no religion now among the people of this planet, I don't know about other planets, stronger. I'm not talking about how people feel about how they want their religion to be, but there's no religion on this planet stronger than the religion of white supremacy. Now, why do I call white supremacy a religion? Because a religion is a strong belief backed up by action. You can't have a religion if you don't back up your religion all the way, I mean right to the hilt. You can't half-step on your religion, because if you don't do everything that your religion requires you to do, how can you call it your religion? That's the logic. How can you have a religion and not have it at the same time? You either have it or you don't. The white supremacists are the only people on this planet who practice their religion all the way 24/7 and don't miss a beat. They have a strong belief in dominating and mistreating people based on color, and they call it a God-given gift, that they have been given this as a mission. See, because they say that that's what God mandates them to do, dominate and mistreat people because of color. Look at a person's color and say, there is a person that I can dominate and mistreat. And I'm going to do it 24/7 in every area of activity. And I'm going to use deception and violence as the means of achieving that in all 9 areas of activity. And they are not talking about doing it like other people give lip service to their religion. They do it. They do it. It's an evil religion. You can have a religion that's evil. And you can worship a God that tells you to do evil. You might give that God another name, but that's your God. If that's what your God tells you to do, mistreat people, and you successfully do it, and the person who has another religion says, well, my religion requires me to keep you from doing that, but that person doesn't do it, doesn't oppose that religion, then that person's religion is weaker than the religion that's getting them not to practice their own religion. People always cut corners when the white supremacists come around on their religion. The white supremacists will look at whatever religion a black person has and say, I'll allow you to do 1, 2, and 3. But now 4, 5, and 6, I decided last night I'm not going to allow you to do that anymore. And under white supremacy, the non-white people have always said, yes, master, and back down. and take that out of their religion, even though they have been saying that it was a part of their religion until the white supremacists showed up. That goes to show that's always proof that the white supremacist religion is stronger than any other religion on this planet 24/7 in all 9 areas of activity. I've never seen it any different. Now, Neely Fuller, having made that statement, is either telling a lie or he's telling the truth. Based on what? Observation. I don't want it to be true. But just because I don't want it to be true doesn't say that it isn't, which is a habit that black people particularly have got to get out of. We don't want something to be true, so we walk around all day pretending that it's not. It hurts our feelings.
800-450-7876, line 1. Kwame's calling us from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hello, gentlemen. How you guys doing? Well, gentlemen, I would like for Dr. Neely to expand on what that president of the NRA said. He said about in a few years we will be able to own colored people again.
The president of what?
The NRA.
Said in a few years we will be able to do what?
Own colored people again. He said that in one of his statements.
What I have written in my book is when a person makes a statement, the person who makes the statement should explain it. I can't explain what somebody else said. See, and that's a part of the requirement that I have to do. When a person's, I don't know what that means. I can think of a guess about what it means, but the counter-racist code says you don't want to do any guessing as best you can. And the procedure for stop guessing is to get correct information. So I would have to go to that person and say, did you make this statement? That would be the first thing I'd say. Get that straight. So we don't have what? Confusion. Then I would ask, what do you mean by the statement that you made? And I don't want to walk away with a question mark over my head. The code says that. The counter-racist code requires. When you have a conversation with someone, you don't ever want to walk away from that conversation with a question mark over your head when that person that you were talking to was supposed to answer the question.
All right. Doc, Kwame, I thank you for your question. Doc, at this point, why don't you tell them the name of your book, and because I just called the code because it's got a long title, and how they can get copies.
It's called the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. It's got that word system in it, but it's only a concept. See, it's something we're trying to do. I call it the compensatory code, meaning making up for what's missing. What's missing is justice. What's missing is correctness. What's missing is peace. There's a whole bunch of things that are missing that need to be made up for. And the only way to make up for things that are missing is to get those things that are missing on the plate. So I call it the compensatory counter-racist code. That's another way I have of expressing it. And it's a textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy. If you don't consider yourself to be a victim of white supremacy, then the book probably will not be of any functional use to you. It's for victims. And it tells you what to say and what to do, gives you some guidelines in certain situations in the system of white supremacy in all 9 areas of activity. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
800-450-7876, line 5. Tokiomo is calling us from D.C. Tokiomo, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Hey, hello, Carl. Thank you for taking my call, and hello to your guests. I like the last statement he just made, is for people who consider themselves victims of white supremacy. I like that last statement. But first of all, I got to correct him. There is no such thing as white supremacy. The only thing I see is white extremism. Extremism, white greed, white bullying all around the world. It's been going on for centuries. before we were born, there's been a system in place, okay, and the system is based on greed, bullying, and extremism. There's plenty to go around in the planet for all of God's children, but there's not enough for the greedy, going around to continents, other countries, trying to grab what they can and subject people to the way of life. Now, people of color got to understand this and get their acts together in order to fight this evil. Again, I say there's no such thing as white supremacy, because supremacy is to suggest that they are better or they are better than anybody else.
All right, Tokyo Mo, I'm not going to let you put your foot any further, but I'm going to give you a chance. I want you to stay on the line because you didn't get it. I'm going to say because this technique that Dr. Fuller uses, you've got to listen very keenly, as I mentioned earlier, because then you'll misconstrue. He's not saying that white people are superior or better than us. That's not what he's saying. So this is the problem that Dr. Wilson had too when she was trying to explain it. So Neely Fuller Jr., can you help Tokyo Mo out? He says there's no such thing because he thinks you're saying that white people are supreme or better than us.
Well, it's just a way that I have of saying it, and not just to get people's attention, but it's true. Anyone who can tell me what to do, and what they're telling me is something that shouldn't be done. Anyone who can mistreat me, and I don't want to be mistreated, and I can't figure out how to stop them, is, logically speaking, regardless of how I feel about it, supreme over me. Now, just because a person is supreme over me at a particular time, in a certain circumstance, has a gun to my head, that's supremacy. That's supremacy. It doesn't make any difference how I feel about it. Yes, I can be emotional about it, but I can't deny the logical fact that the person has a gun over to my head, and I'm doing what that person wants me to do, even though that's not anything that I want to do.
Right. Hold that thought there, Doc. We got to take a quick break. Our last look at the traffic in the DMV. Stay with us, Tokyo. I want you, because I think other people too have missed the point that Neely Fuller is trying to say. 800-450-7876 gets you on. Your calls are next after the traffic and weather update on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for rolling with us, folks. We're in class. This is those of you who take logic in college. You'll understand. You'll grab it better. And I must admit, when I first heard the concept, it took me a while before I got it. Then I kind of, wow. It's so simple. Sometimes you're thinking something much more deeper. But if you get hung up on the word supreme, you're lost. The word you need to hang your hat on is the system. But Neely Fuller Jr., I'll let you help out Tokyomo again, because he thinks that you're saying that white people are supreme, meaning better than us, and we're inferior than them. And that's not it at all. But if you can explain, maybe you can break it down a little bit so he can understand.
When I say supreme, a lot of people get all kinds of ideas in their head other than the idea of supreme meaning exactly what it says. It means that someone is telling you what to do, and you better do it, even though you may not want to do it. That's all supremacy is in any measure. In any measure, when you are opposed to what a person is telling you and say, I don't believe that, and I'm not going along with it, and then the person says, you'll go along with it because I can harm you and you can't harm me because you don't know how. You don't know how to harm me, and I can harm you. So I'm going to get you to do something that I know you don't want to do, but you're going to do it because you are afraid of me harming you, because you don't know how to stop me from harming you. So therefore, I am, by definition, supreme over you. It's not complicated at all. You say you don't want me to do what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it anyway, and you don't know how to stop me. You haven't come up with a formula or a code for stopping me. So that makes me supreme over you. It's the same as the prisoner. I'll give another illustration. The prisoner is not supreme over the warden of the prison. The warden is supreme over the prisoner. That's why the prisoner has the label of being a prisoner. Now, the prisoner may walk around and recite poetry, which is what a lot of people do to alleviate their pain, and say, oh, I'm not in prison. The warden is. Why? Because that's how I feel about it. And the warden says, oh, that's how you feel about it? You feel that I am your prisoner rather than you are my prisoner. And the prisoner says, yeah, because that makes me feel better. And the warden says, that's exactly how I want you as a prisoner to feel. That's exactly how I want you to talk. Now you go and spread that all over the prison yard to the other prisoners and tell them they're not in prison. I am, because they see me walking around in here among you. So therefore, I am the prisoner, and you all are all wardens. You like that? You like, fella? Enjoy yourself. Have a nice day.
Wow.
And that's what black people have done all over the world too long. Nobody tells me what to do. No, I do what I want to do. I'm a free person. I do what I want to do. Nobody tells me what to do. And we have bought that. And that's what you call a perfect slave situation. No, when you start realizing that the warden has power and that I am subject to the warden is supreme over me in this prison called the system of white supremacy. That's the first step toward not being a prisoner. You have to realize that you are.
I hope that works.
And the frame showed that all through the movie Shawshank Redemption. That's an entertaining way to see how he thought, different from the other prisoners who had resigned themselves to the prison, like Red, played by Morgan Freeman. He'd just say, well, I'm going to make myself comfortable in the prison because looks like I'm going to be here forever. And the frame came in and say, I'm going to outsmart the warden. I'm not going to do it right away because I can't. But I recognize I am in a serious situation. I am a prisoner. And that crooked warden up there is my master. I'm going to call him that. I'm going to act like he is because that's what he is. But it's not going to stay that way because I recognize my weakness. And I am going to recognize his strength. But by my recognizing my weakness, I'm becoming stronger. And I'm getting out of here. First of all, in order to get strong, as any person that works in a gym will tell you, you have to recognize how weak you are. Or you ain't going to ever do anything in that gym except sit there and look at the equipment.
And you know, Dr. Wilson should talk about it. A lot of people in the system of white supremacy, they're not trying to get out of it or repair it. They're just trying to get a better slot in the system of white supremacy. I guess that was the character that you mentioned.
That's what Morgan Freeman was doing. Get some more cigarettes into the prison.
Right. And that's what a lot of black folks are doing. They're not trying to disband this system. They're just trying to get a better slot in the system of white supremacy.
And the frame said, I'm not only going to get out of this prison, I'm going to bring this whole system down, and I'm going to stay out of it forever. The system that I'm in. And that was the lesson of that picture. People need to see that picture. That's why they keep showing it over and over again. White supremacists understand that lesson in that picture. That's an entertaining way to learn how white supremacy works and how to recognize it when you see it, how supremacy in anything works, and particularly when it's an evil supremacy. You have to first recognize it to be what it is. Evil can be strong. Evil is not necessarily weak unless you are stronger than the evil. But you can't just walk around saying it. You got to prove it. You have to prove it. And the frame understood that. If you understand, if you saw some certain scenes in the movie, Shawshank Redemption, what was Anna the Frame doing? A lot of people don't notice this. He was playing chess. Chess is a game of figuring weaknesses and strengths. So is checkers. Chess is that way. Also, the movie Casablanca, the opening scene that shows Humphrey Bogart, Rick Blaine, he's doing what? Playing chess, studying weaknesses and strengths. And he was playing both sides of the board. Playing both sides of the board. Expert chess players do that. Checker players too. They know both sides of the board, not just one side. And that's how you become a master. When you know yourself and you know your opponent. You know what moves they're going to make before they make them. It's the same way in science. It's the same way in logic. And these things are universal.
And let me interrupt. The other side knows exactly what we're going to do. They know they're counter-programming us all the time.
All the time.
They research us and they know exactly how we're going to react. And it's usually an emotional reaction. Folks, I want you, this is very, very important. It's critical. You got to listen very closely to what Neely Fuller is trying to teach. 800-450-7876. Let's go across the pond on line one. Paul's waiting for us again out in London. Paul, you're on with Neely Fuller.
Good afternoon, Carl. Good afternoon, Carl, and good afternoon to your guest, the elder, and I most respect Neely Fuller, and good afternoon to your listeners. So, you've provided a great work, and I much appreciate it, and you've got a fantastic logical mind. But please excuse me for just a few moments and allow me to deal with some of my own thoughts. I hope you don't mind. We have a saying here. We say, let your words be your sound, and let your sounds be your power. And what is power? Power is the ability to define your own reality. Can I say that again for you? I say, let your words be your sound, be your power. And power is the ability to define your own reality. So therefore, what I'm saying is that the etymology of the word supremacy leads us to accept that man is supreme, or he has some sort of total and absolute power over another man. And I know that's what you're alluding to, but can I say this? We do recognize that there is a power bigger than man. And that power is known as the divine. Many people call it many things. They call it God. They call it Allah. They call it many things. But let me refer to it as the divine. And that is the only supreme power on the earth we use. And that's the only supreme power which is supreme. But I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of giving us a logical way to deal with our problems and to find a solution to our problems. But can I just say this, sir, is that what you're describing as being supreme, I humbly would like to call it extreme. Because how many of us find ourselves in the position we find ourselves in today, stolen from Africa, with chains around our feet and our necks, watching our sisters and mothers raped to serve another man. I don't call supreme, I call that an extreme behavior. And to watch what's taking place, sir, to watch on any social network or on television, to watch a police officer whose duty is to serve and protect.
Right. Hang on a second, Paul. We got to take this quick break. I'll let you finish up. I know Neely Fuller wants to get at you as well. 800-450-7876. Take your calls next. It's a big show. It rolls on from 1450. WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. I guess Neely Fuller Jr. We're talking about racism, white supremacy. 800-450-7876. Go back across the pond to London town. Paul, I'll let you finish your question for Neely Fuller Jr.
So thank you very much, Carl. Thank you for your patience. To watch some of the events which we've seen as an outsider, tears come to my eyes. That's how I can explain it. I cry for my brothers and sisters in the land of America, because what I'm witnessing, I don't describe as supreme. That is an extreme. When a police officer assassinates a person in cold blood. To me, that's not supreme. That is an extreme behavior. So I'd just like to humbly call it for what it is, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, keep listening. They'll give him a
Yes,
chance
I'd
to
like to
explain.
respond to that
I'm sure you would. Go ahead.
in a codified manner. Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes. Now, I wrote the book, the compensatory code. It's just a book of suggestions, and so it leaves that opening. It's not dictatorial at all. That's why I call it the United Independent System. Now, a lot of people, and I have to take this into consideration, object to the use of the term white supremacy. So my response is to say, I'm going to use it because it works for me. It gives me adrenaline. I mean, it makes me get up in the morning. It makes me keep going on radio programs. It makes me keep writing. It makes me keep observing. I get adrenaline from this. I get energy from it. I could take the position that, hey, there's no such thing as that. But I had that position at one time, and it didn't inspire me to do anything. And so I was inspired to do nothing. Okay, that's how it affected me. Now, different words affect people different ways. That's the magic of words. So, therefore, I took that into consideration in writing the book and in coming up with the concept. That's why I call it the United Independent concept. So, I would just like the gentleman, if he's still there, to tell me what word gives him the inspiration to keep moving, and use that word. See, a word is nothing but a tool. So if he wants to obliterate that word from his mind, white supremacy, and call it something else, and what was it he was calling it? I couldn't quite understand the word he was using it. Does anybody...
What was it, Kiana?
The host.
Extremist. He said extremist. Extremist.
Oh, white extremism?
Yeah, extremism.
Oh, white extremism. Now, extremism means what? See, words have meanings. So when you say white, and then behind the word white you put extremism, you mean white to the extreme. You're being white to the extreme of being white, or white to the extreme of being... What does extreme mean? See, words are supposed to have meanings, so that, people who are listening now all over the world and whatnot, they will know what this thing is, if it exists at all. So white extremism, meaning, is the person extremely white, or what does it mean?
All right. I tell you what, we got a bunch of folks who want to talk to you. We got a tweet question. Let me deal with the tweet, and then I'll get the callers for you. It says, Carl, much of white supremacy throughout history has gained power through bloodshed and war. Does Neely Fuller think we can destroy the system without ultimate bloodshed?
Does Neely Fuller think that it can destroy the system without bloodshed?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's up to the white supremacists. They determine what the reaction of people is going to be, because they believe in bloodshed themselves. White supremacy could not be maintained without perfect deception, and they don't have that, and or without bloodshed. Deceit and violence is what keeps the white supremacist system going. They are able mostly to deceive people. They know how to use words. They are masters of words in such a way that they can manipulate people's thinking, and people always act the way that they think. That's just logical. So as long as they can deceive people into doing the things the way that they want it done in all areas of activity, in religion, in sex, in economics, just keep fooling people by saying one thing and doing another. They're experts at that, and having people do things that don't make sense, but they know how to make it look like it makes sense, and they do it with words, things that make no sense at all, things that are not logical at all. they lead non-white people into doing tons of things that have no logic to it at all, but they sound so sophisticated. They're so advanced in the use of language, and they know how to say things to people and turn their minds inside out. So the people don't know what they're doing, but the white supremacists know what they're doing. So they're experts at this. So you have to understand that in order to counter that. And you counter that with the tools of words too. And so if the gentleman wants to use the term white extremism, and that inspires him to oppose it if he thinks it should be opposed, then by all means, the counter-racist code is scientific. If that's the science that works for you, sir, then by all means use that term, white extremism, and tell other people to use it if it inspires them to counter it. All words are good for, any words are good for, is to accomplish the job that you want done. Words are nothing but a tool, tools in a box, or outside of a box.
800-450-7876. Let's go to line 1. Rick's calling us from Ontario, Canada. Rick, you're on with Neely Fuller Jr.
Thank you, Carl, and Dr. Fuller. I was just having a thought, a flashback when I was a child, and I don't know if this was a blessing or a curse. At least at the time I didn't. I remember watching an episode of Superman, and Superman, of course, flew into the window and thwarted 3 bank robbers. And the bank robbers, now I'm an impressionable child, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. I don't even think I was that old. And the bank robbers turn around to Superman, who's standing there with his hands on his hips and his big S sticking out, the S on his shirt. Bank robbers turn around and empty their revolvers into his S, his chest. Of course, he stands there and smirks at them. Once they emptied the bullets, they threw the gun, and Superman ducked. And in my mind, something went off to show me that this is merely a deception, a lie, a charade to make people think certain things, when in reality, if Superman could take bullets in the chest, he certainly should have no fear of an empty metal gun being thrown at him. And at that point, I realized that this is really just a charade. I find it almost incredulous that people can, in the face of pure logic, question what are actual facts that Dr. Fuller, as well as Dr. Wilson, always presented to us. And he is so masterful in it. And I don't mean this to sound, this is not a pat on the back or anything. It's an admirable trait to be able to be an intellect to the point where you don't even attempt to answer questions that are raised about what other people think. That is a true wise man that I think a lot of us, in my humble opinion, should learn from. Science has to do with facts, and I hear what you are speaking is pure science. I've often thought that, I used to think that elitism was somewhat of a sin, but I'm coming to realize that many people simply haven't allowed themselves to learn to think logically, mathematically, and therefore they get caught up on words, as Dr. Fuller often presents, that each word has a meaning. And people use words without knowing what the meaning is, or they make up a meaning to satisfy their level of understanding. So, that having been said, I've thought recently that one thing we could do to put out the notion of solidarity or unity is to boycott these coming up Olympics. And I know it's a lot of stress on people who have practiced, but I think that if we, black people in America, simply never tried to get the gold, come away with something else. Let these white folks let them see that they have no real power in our unity. A gold medal might mean something to somebody on a personal level, But it's an insult that we would go 200 years after supposedly having been freed, or approximately, and still sacrifice our bodies so that these people can then gloat in the fact that they have been rewarded for something that we have done as prisoners of war. Also, I'd also say people should really read about the Warsaw Ghetto and what took place there after the Weimar Republic turned into the Nazi regime, to see where their avenues of protection and escape are, because we are most certainly in that time. Dr. Fuller, as a question, a final question, because of the difficulty that
hang on a second, Rick, we got to take this break. I'll let you pose your question on the other side. 800-450-7876. You too can join the conversation. We Neely Fuller Jr. We're taking calls right after this break on 1450 WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. I just want to remind you, Molefi Asante is going to join us actually tomorrow, Dr. Asante, talk about the Dallas shooting and the attempts, the media's attempt actually, to link Afrocentricity to the Dallas shooter. We're with Neely Fuller Jr. and speaking with Rick in Ontario, Canada. And Rick, you're going to pose your question for Neely Fuller Jr.
Yes, sir. Other than your book, Dr. Fuller, which I do own, actually I have both of them and have had it for some years, is there a forum where people can come, or not necessarily physically come, but visit and interact with you on the level where the opposition to what it is that you're stating doesn't exist? In other words, where people really want to learn the principles and the discipline that I hear that you are espousing that is necessary in order for us to simply turn and face the problem for what it is. That's my question. And I appreciate your efforts, sir.
No. The answer is no. And the reason is based on logic. That's why it's called the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. I'm trying to get people away from following people. Follow logic. Logic came with the universe. That's what I try to follow. I listen to people. And, black people have been told by the white supremacists to, that they can't do anything unless they're looking at each other. And they have to be just like they were on the slave ship, be shoulder to shoulder, actually touching each other. And I think that's what we got into this habit of, even when there's tragedy. Everybody comes and assembles in one place, and it's a lot of hugging and kissing and high-fiving and singing and whatnot. And this is how the white supremacists have always envisioned as togetherness. They have told black people, well, this is what togetherness is all about. This is what unity is all about. This is what organization is all about. When they don't think that way at all. One white supremacist on a desert island knows what to do according to the white supremacist what? The white supremacist code. In other words, he brings what he needs, or she brings what she needs right to that island. And it's all in their head and in their resolution to do the mission of white supremacy. I'm going to be supreme over this island. I got here in the morning, and by nightfall, I have a code that I'm bringing that's in my head that I have practiced. Things that I do and things that I don't do. That's all that I need. I don't need to go try to find a whole bunch of other white people and see if they're here or if they're coming here in order for me to get some type of hug, hand-holding while I'm going about doing the business of white supremacy. No. All I need is the logic of white supremacy, the code that says if you do this and you do this and you do this, you will be in charge of whatever it is that you want to be in charge of. It's a mechanical thing. The non-white people don't have anything that corresponds to that. That's why we are not successful in opposing the white supremacists. All they need is a code. It's not we need each other. No, they need a code as individuals. They operate as individuals. Now, it happens to be 2 or 3 individuals, sometimes they don't even talk to each other because they don't have to. They know the white code. They follow the code, the white supremacist code, wherever they are. And that's why they're successful. But black people think that it's all a physical thing, that if we are not actually looking at another black person, we can't even think. We can't even move. We're completely traumatized. But somehow, if we are shoulder to shoulder, or we are chained together like we usually are, like we were in the bottom of the slave ship, somehow we call that unity. Even if we are chained together in somebody else's prison, we say, well, we're all together. So therefore, magically, all kinds of wonderful things are going to happen because we are physically in proximity to each other. And the white supremacists look at that and they say, we got them as long as they think like that. But if they ever get to the place, they can think as individuals scattered all over the place with a powerful thing called a counter-racist code in their heads. We, as white supremacists, are in big trouble. And anybody who has seen a little sample of that anywhere on the planet has found out that that is absolutely true. The white supremacists know it, but they always say, well, you black people need to go down by the riverside and, you know, and hug each other and get together, that, you know, and sing and whatnot. And, you know, and somehow, you know, the walls of Jericho will come tumbling down. And they wink at each other when they say that, and black people buy into it because we have been trained that way. I mean, we were all together on the slave ship, and we still are, physically. But when we can be anywhere alone, on the moon alone, and know what to do and what not to do, that's what you call real power. Because there's a code for being on the moon or alone. There's a code for everything. We need a counter-racist code where we can function as individuals, any place that we happen to be, and function with maximum efficiency. That is what you call awesome power as individuals, where if we don't, like it is now, if we don't have another black person that we can hold hands with, we completely fall apart. Completely fall apart because we think that everything is physical with no brain. Chickens with no head. Lots of body movement, but no head, no brain. Not able to function. We don't want any more situations like that. That's why I call it, based on my textbook and the concept, the United Independent Compensatory Code. The united means you're united with what? Not with people, but with the logic of the universe. Fire will burn. Water is wet, regardless of how anybody feels about it. And when you understand how to use fire and how to use water in the most constructive manner in order to get the most constructive results, you can be alone and do that. Because you are not alone. Why? Because you're tapping into everything that makes the universe work. You know the difference between fire and water. You know what that leaf on that tree will do if you do this and that and the other with it. You know what that grain of sand at the bottom of the ocean, if you take it and do this and this and this and this with it, that you'll get a certain result. That is what you call real power. And it's an individual person doing it. And at the same time, you are in unity with the person over on the other side of the mountain who is doing the same thing, even though you are not looking at that person or hugging that person or high-fiving that person. We think that that's power. That's just some looks, some hugs, and some high-fives, and that's all that it is. There's no power in that at all. Zero.
We have some more folks want to speak to you. 800-450-7876. Folks, I hope you're following this. Let's go to line 5. Michael's calling us from Columbus, Ohio. Michael, Go with Neely Fuller Jr.
Yes. Thanks for taking my call. It's a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Fuller. In terms of religion and the logic, just to get our people to understand, 20 years ago, maybe even shorter, our churches and our preachers wouldn't accept man marrying a man. But the system allowed our preachers to change their way of thinking. We know it's wrong. Every one of us knew that it don't work, and a bear don't marry a male bear, and a male gorilla don't marry a male gorilla. But we accepted it. Mr. Fuller's telling us like we keep putting ourselves through the ringer, flushing ourselves down the system when we allow a man to sell you water. How does one man control the water when there's many of us, when God gave it to all of us? We continue to do this over and over. My question to you, Mr. Fuller, as the young man, that I don't condone killing, but the young man that did do the killing, did he free himself at that time he made that decision from the system? Did he let himself decide, I'm not going to participate in this system anymore?
All right, good question. Thanks, Michael.
Was that a question?
Yeah, he said, you got it?
No, I didn't catch the question.
The question was the young man who they accused of shooting up the cops in Dallas. Did he free himself of the system by doing that?
Oh, I can't say that. I can't comment. The code does not allow me to comment on any type of violence that another non-white person does. I mean, and the non-white person isn't here to explain it, other than to comment that he did what he did, and whether or not I would do it. And the answer is no. According to the code, I'm not allowed to do that. I mean, there are certain things that the code allows me to do, and I can't comment on something that somebody else does. I mean, because I don't know all the particulars of it. But I will say this: according that I'll have to use a part of the code that applies to all situations. All situations, anywhere, particularly a violent situation. And it goes like this. It's 4 points, and I'll give them right quick. Many people have been harmed, like in this Dallas incident. Many people have been harmed who should not be harmed. That's number one. Number two, many people are to blame. Many people are to blame for what happened. Number three, the people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight. Right now, right this minute, the people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight. Number four, the people who are most to blame are all white supremacists. Why? Having said that, those four things, and I hope everybody heard them. I can repeat them, but I don't have time. But I'll repeat this many, many times in the future because this is codified. Why? Because the white supremacists are in charge of everything that non-white people do, including non-white people shooting each other up in Chicago. The white supremacists engineered all of that. So anything that happens anywhere on the planet among black people that should not happen, the usual suspects are the white supremacists. That's why I say they're hiding in plain sight, the people who are most to blame. Well, it's a lot of people to blame, including black people, when they do it. But if you're going to blame the persons who are really behind it all, it's always the usual suspects, the white supremacists. There are no exceptions to that. None. It's the white supremacists every time because they teach everybody, and they put all of the weapons and everything else, everything that shouldn't happen among black people. When you track it down, it always came from the white supremacists. It is nothing original that black people ever do.
Well, we got to cut it right there because we're out of time. Folks, I hope you really understood what Neely Fuller was saying. Neely Fuller, thank you for joining us again. Hopefully, folks, you read up just Google his name and you get the title of his book. The short title is The Code. But I thank you again. I hope folks really understood what you're trying to tell us. We got to roll out of here, but we want you to stay strong, stay positive, stay in the light. See you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Right?